We were talking about the number of veterans who are watching what is unfolding in Afghanistan and how they might be feeling about it. Well, we have a veteran joining us now. He's actually a former Green Beret and is a friend of our producer. They went to college together. Fran Racioppi joins us right now on St. Louis Talks, the founder of FR6. Fran, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
And our producer, Ben Boyd, told us that you guys were, I believe, juniors in college, and 9/11 happens, and that's when is that the time that you decided to leave the career of journalism that you had hoped for to then join the service?
It is. I was there at Boston University studying broadcast journalism, and I was ready to go be the next Tom Brokaw. He was my hero. And then 9/11 happened. It was the beginning of junior year, and I watched for 2 years as these guys with what I call long hair, beards, riding horses really changed the world. And these were the Green Berets who went in the initial days of October 2001, worked with Hamid Karzai, the Northern Alliance, created a guerrilla army to defeat the Taliban. And it was so impactful and so profound that I said, forget it. I can always report on the news later, but if I'm going to go make an impact and make the news, now's the time in life to do it.
Admirable. And we thank you for your service of the United States Army and as a Green Beret, which is the elite. Tell us how you're feeling, because I just heard from a Marine friend of mine says all Marines have a bond that is incomparable. Semper Fi. We have to have a swift, decisive response. Fran, what is your response and reaction to what we're seeing?
This is a tough time. This is very difficult. The motto of the Green Berets is Deo presso liber, free the oppressed. What we did in Afghanistan for 20 years was the definition of free the oppressed. We defeated an occupying force in the Taliban that was an oppressive regime against the people of Afghanistan and allowed for a hotbed and safe haven for international terrorism. We spent 20 years unwinding that. And very quickly, in a matter of days, we abandoned it. And we left these people to become oppressed again. And we saw how quickly that has now happened. We can argue back and forth all day long on the future of Afghanistan. What's our interest? What's the strategic reason to remain there? But at the end of the day, we have to protect those people who protected us, who worked with us, who supported us. The majority of the population in Afghanistan is under the age of 25 years old. The only thing they know is American interest in that region. And it's not that much longer, 10 years, 20 years, where we would need to remain involved, where we would turn the tide of that country and help them to become a more modern and society that can contribute to the world.
Fran, it sounds like you're saying that we should have stayed, or that we needed to stay.
We needed to stay. We needed to stay in some capacity, not only militarily, but also diplomatically and economically, and create an environment where you can foster a society of people who contribute to the global society. There's reasons to stay. You have to stay in order to there's an argument around nation building, and people say we're not good at America is not good at nation building. We shouldn't nation build. But if you look back at history in World War II, and the fact that we still have bases in Germany, we still have bases in Japan and Italy, and all over Europe, we stayed. We stayed there for 70, 80 years almost. We've still been there. And we worked alongside these nations that are now our strongest allies. Had we left 10 years after the war, 20 years after the war, the ability for those areas to fall back into chaos and become controlled by the Russians, the Chinese, the adverse actors in the world who seek to do us harm, that would have happened. But we didn't happen because we stayed. And that's what's going to happen here in Afghanistan now.
But the interesting aspect of what you're talking about is that when you look at some of those places, Japan, for instance, they would love us to leave. There are those who would love us to leave. Not everyone, of course.
There are those, but when you look at Japan's ability to recenter and refocus itself after World War II and become a powerhouse in the global economy, a lot of that was due to stabilization that allowed for focus on stabilization of the economy.
Fran Racioppi. Is that right?
Racioppi.
Racioppi. I thought I had it. So Ben Boyd, our executive producer, said that you were actually helping with some of the evacuations. Can you talk about that? I mean, I don't know if you can, but can you talk about what you're doing to help get some of those innocent Afghans and our U.S. citizens out of Afghanistan? You're hands-on right now, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I was earlier this week. I've since left the effort, but absolutely, I was called in earlier this week to help stand up an operation to evacuate Afghan citizens who have been supportive of U.S. interests. There's only so many airplanes that the U.S. military has, and there's only so many people that logistically they can actually move as a military organization in any 24-hour period. But there's a lot of organizations that are helping a lot of people in their non-governmental organizations, and NGOs, their nonprofits, their charities, who are working with Afghan citizens who have special immigrant visas. We've heard the term SIV a lot in the last couple of weeks, or that are actual U.S. citizens who hold dual citizenship of U.S. and Afghanistan, or are green card holders who are in Afghanistan. So there's a lot of folks there. And in order to support the military effort, there is a group of folks who have come together on that nonprofit charity side to take private sector donations from companies, individuals, other organizations, and then devote those financial resources to getting commercial aircraft and chartered aircraft and chartering those planes, getting them into the airport in Kabul, and then loading them up with as many of these Afghan citizens that have supported U.S. interests or aligned to U.S. values, and getting them out and then getting them into different areas of the world.
I am torn between two questions to ask you, and one is about this current worker shortage that we are seeing around the country, people making more or the same on unemployment, and families who can't find childcare. The reasons are varied as to why people are not working because of the work you do with your company and as a member of what's called the Talent War Group. You coach in talent management, and you advise organizations and teams of how to do what they do. As you watch this worker shortage in the country, what do you think from a talent management standpoint? What do you think about what is happening?
Well, people are everything in organizations. It doesn't matter how good your process is. It doesn't matter how good your technology is. It doesn't matter how efficient your operation is, or even how good your product may be. If you don't have highly qualified, highly competent people in roles within your company, the company and the organization is destined to fail. And that holds true for whether it's a private sector company, a military unit, or an athletics team. So what we focus on is getting leaders of organizations to focus on an investment in their people. And that starts with the recruiting effort. And then subsequently, once someone becomes an employee of an organization, it's not a matter of just saying, well, you're here now, go ahead and do your job. There's a continued investment that has to be made into those people. So in order to get people into organizations, have them stand the highest chance of being successful, those leadership initiatives to invest in them is what's going to draw people back to the workforce. And there's a lot of people who want to change jobs right now, and that's contributing to what you just mentioned. People want to go where they feel valued and appreciated, and that comes from an investment in your people. And if you can create an organization that does that, then you're going to draw talent in.
We'd also like to see veterans live. The suicide rate is tragic in this country, and I understand that you teach that's how to sail. As the race director for Sail Ahead, a veteran service organization, that just sounds amazing. Clearly, you're saving lives out there.
The veteran suicide rate at 22 a day is a very sad statistic. And when I first got involved with Sail Ahead was about 5 years ago. And when the numbers were coming out that it was 22 a day, I thought in full transparency that I would never still be having that statistic out there 5 years later. And it's so unfortunate that we continue to have to say that 22 veterans commit suicide every day. We have to take care of each other. It starts with looking around and saying, how can I help someone who may not be able to help themselves? And what we do at Sail Ahead is we give an alternative means to bringing people together. One of the biggest things that is lost in your transition out of the military is a sense of community and a sense of competition. And sailing, I know a lot of people don't get into sailing, but especially if you don't live on the coast, but it is a sport that allows you to have a competitive spirit, and it takes a lot of teamwork. And if you can bring people together and bring veterans together who are highly motivated, they're seeking a sense of community and team, they want to learn a new skill, and they want to create a competitive environment, that's something that they lost. This is a great sport in which to do that.
Hey, Fran, I'd really like to know how Americans can help your organization that you're involved. You have a website you can send them to, and as soon as you deliver that, I would like to give out the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, because there's a lot of people. I was with a Marine the other day that was just getting so worked up so quickly, and I've been I texted him the next morning saying, hey, thank you for the chat, but I'm worried about you. But how can we help with the therapy that you are doing with the sailing?
Absolutely. You can go to sailahead.org is the website, sailahead.org. That's the organization that I'm a part of that's doing the sailing piece.
That's great.
And then as far as the Afghanistan effort goes, it's really important to understand that we're on a deadline to get as many people out as we can. But once everybody's out, there's organizations out there that have to now help these Afghan refugees go to a final place and integrate into society or reintegrate into society.
We've talked about it several times on our show here, actually.
Yeah, and so one of those organizations is called No One Left Behind, is an organization that's leading that effort right now. And I'm actually working with them right now, and I'm working on bringing them onto my podcast, the Jedburgh podcast, next week, where we're going to speak with some of their senior advisors, some of their senior leaders there, and some of their actual Afghan refugees who have come to the U.S. on these special immigrant visas. But that's another great organization to reach out to if you want to get involved and you want to help that next step and how are we going to continue to bring these Afghan refugees into the world.
And by the way, for those of you that may need it or know somebody that may need it, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is on St. Louis Talk's Facebook page, but it is 800-273-8255.
Fran, I wanted to ask you about this frustration that a lot of Americans have that the equipment that the United States provided, my understanding, for the Afghan army, we provided it for them, but then they, it seems, threw their hands up. Talk about that equipment, what our understanding should be about that.
Yeah, the equipment, there's a lot of money in that equipment. Mm-hmm. A lot of money was spent there. This is a similar situation as what happened to when we left Iraq. And there's a combination of two things that are happening right now. Number one is there's a lot of equipment that we gave to the Afghan army, just like we did to the Iraqi army, that they used. And it was U.S. equipment, Ford trucks and Humvees and large armored vehicles that they then use in the conduct of their daily work. That equipment's theirs, through whatever agreements they either bought it or we gave it to them in the majority of the times. Then there's the U.S. equipment that the U.S. forces were using. In Iraq, we retrograded in an orderly fashion the majority of that equipment. In Afghanistan, unfortunately, due to the decisions made to expedite the leaving of the country and the retrograde of the country, a lot of that equipment was left and abandoned.
Hey, Fran, when you say retrograde, do you mean that it's still operable? We didn't dismantle it? Because I've been hearing that one soldier told me, well, I hope they took the brains out of the helicopters. I saw footage of one Black Hawk, one of 160 that are over there at $6 million a clip. They were trying to do like taxiing on a runway or something like that. So what do you mean by that retrograde?
Yeah, so a retrograde is to remove your forces and equipment in an orderly fashion. So normally when we would withdraw from somewhere, that's what we would do. This situation is much more hasty, and some have termed it a retreat. And which has forced us to destroy a lot of equipment. You've seen the reports of equipment, us dropping bombs and us blowing up equipment that was left there so that the Taliban couldn't use it. The helicopters have certainly been a big point of contention because there was recently an influx of about 40 helicopters that went there to support the effort, and now they've been left. So a tremendous amount of money and capability. And what we don't want is to have our adversaries get their hands on that technology.
I think we lost him.
Okay, so two things have occurred here from our understanding with Fran Racioppi, that there was equipment that they either bought or we gave to the Afghan army, and they have given up, and then there's equipment that we left. So both of those things
and
are
he also said that we have destroyed some as well.
And we destroyed some that we left,
which I guess that's a smart thing to do because they can reverse engineer some of the technology. If the Taliban or ISIS-K, it's a division of ISIS,
right,
or from where
that's
they're
all that
from.
I know.
So anyway, huge thanks to Fran for joining us, and thanks to Ben Boyd for connecting us with him. It really, really is heartbreaking, and they're still trying to evacuate people out of Afghanistan even today.